What's up, guys? I'm Garrett.
And I'm Keith.
Today we're reviewing Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Let's start with why, man.
Yeah.
It's a good book. Yeah, tell me what you think about it.
So here's the thing. We talked about this before we recorded this book, and I'm like, yeah, I like the book. It was pretty good. I did not realize how many times I quote this daily. I mean, I don't want to say those individual quotes. I constantly bring up stories in this book, and I had no idea until we reread this. As soon as I reread this, I'm like, I cannot believe how much I talk about that. So I'm glad you made me do this one.
And I think that's what I love about this book is it's a lot of stories about different companies that we know very well, and it just gives prime examples of why starting with why is so important and how that can just propel your business forward.
Absolutely, and I want you to think about it in your own business. What are you doing? Where are you going? Where's the future of your company? And are you true to your why? We're about to give a bunch of examples, I'm sure, about many different companies and how they started with why and how they might have lost track of it, that type of thing.
Right.
Book goes through several different companies, right? A couple different people also.
Yeah, I mean, it talks a lot about in here about Apple, about Southwest Airlines, about Harley Davidson, and that's just to name a few.
Yeah.
But he kind of just drills these companies that have really dug down to their why and why they're doing what they're doing and who they're doing it for, and they just stick true to that.
Absolutely. All right, so let's jump into a few of these. I got a few just talking points I wanted to go through real quick. A couple quotes I liked in it. One of them, he kind of starts off the book saying, there are leaders and there are those who lead. I love that quote. I think that's awesome.
Right.
We're going to talk about Apple a little bit, and I didn't realize this. Apple only has 6% of U.S. market share and 3% worldwide, yet who doesn't know who Apple is? Who doesn't think they're on top of the game? Because they are. But
that's because they started with why.
Yep. One little story, maybe not as beneficial. I think it's awesome. Japan and U.S. automakers, there's a story where they visited a U.S. automaker and they had a guy whose job was to take a rubber mallet, go to the door, kind of tap the hinges just a little bit to ensure it fits perfectly. And then when they went to the Japanese car manufacturer, there's nobody doing that. And the U.S. guys were like, they don't do that. Why don't you do that? And they laughed and said, we make sure it fits when we engineer it, when we design it. So that was kind of like, yeah, I was keeping that end in mind.
Right, because if you start with why and have that end in mind, you don't need to kind of check yourself and put yourself back on track with the rubber mallet.
Mm-hmm. Seems like we always have a Henry Ford quote, and I just love this one too much to not go to it. When they asked him,
if they asked him if he asked the people what they wanted, they would say a faster horse.
Yeah, if I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said they wanted faster horses.
But you know what? He started with why and really knew that his goal was to help people with transportation and to move people across the world.
So narrow down your why, though. He talks about the railroads. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. You start with your why. They were doing the railroads. The big railroad companies, they were top of the country. They were the biggest industry out there. They defined themselves as railroads.
Right.
Then when planes, cars, all of that came along, they went out of business. Yeah. They didn't identify as, we help people transport goods or whatever, people better. If they had said we are a transportation company, and right now we're building trains, maybe they'd be building planes and building automobiles right now, but they're not. They defined themselves. Their why was the railroad, not transportation.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of reminds me, your why just keeps you fluid and keeps you adapting as long as you're sticking with your true intention. Mm-hmm. Where if you're just, I'm a railroad company, you've kind of solidified yourself and you've totally limited yourself. And that's why starting with why is so important.
Yeah, and some of these other companies we're going to get into, they talk a lot about in this book, you're not looking for people who want what you have, you're looking for people who believe what you believe. A lot of these companies we're going to talk about a little bit, or certainly that he talks about in this book, that's what they did. They really knew their why. They knew what their customers believed in. They believed what they believed, and that's why they have market share.
Listen in there, man.
So one thing, Southwest real quick. One thing I liked about Southwest that I bring up a lot, they care about their employees. They make all their decisions based on making their employees happy. Because they figure if you go after the customers, you're skipping over your employees. If those customers, if your employees want to come to work every day and they know your why and they believe in your why and they feel like they have a good, clean, safe environment that they're a part of, that just transfers right to the customer. Right? Because now you have happy employees. Where does all that go? Right to your customers.
Yeah, Branson does the same thing.
Yeah.
But one thing he said in the book about Southwest was, they want to have a clean plane. Instead of doing it for the customers, what they did is they said to the staff, do you want to have a clean working environment that'll keep you happy working it every day? Mm-hmm. And when they said yes, and they realized we need to keep the plane clean for ourselves, guess what? That transfers right to the clients.
Mm-hmm. So great leaders don't give people something to work on; they give something to work toward. People to work toward, and that's awesome. And that's kind of Southwest, right?
Yeah, that's starting with why, right? If you give somebody a task that has an endpoint, it's just you're just going to work on this. Like, it gets boring, it gets monotonous. But when you're working towards something, I mean, that's a never-ending journey. That keeps people motivated, man.
Yep. We talked about the railroads maybe not sticking with their why. I remember Oprah. So Oprah. Yeah.
I remember Oprah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so yeah. So tell that story. That was in the book.
So, we've all heard about the stunt that Oprah pulled, and she gave a free car away to everybody in her audience. And I remember that. I'm sure you guys remember that as well. I could not, even after reading this, we're sitting down and talking about it. I can't remember the company that made the cars. I have no clue what car they gave away. Yeah. Right.
I know it is because I wrote it down.
Right. That's the only reason you remember it.
Yep.
But it goes with Oprah's why, right? So Oprah's why is to give back, and she's for the people. And that act portrayed her why, and that's what people remember. Giving a car away to everybody in the audience in no way goes with Pontiac's why, because we don't even know what Pontiac's why is.
Yep. Right?
Great thing that they did. They gave away to a lot of people, but you're not going to remember them because it doesn't go with their why. Right? It's just it's not congruent with how they run the rest of their business.
Yep.
So even after he talks about it in this book, I couldn't even remember the company still.
Yeah. So that was a huge thing. Oprah, we know what her why is, and now we're all going to remember that. And nobody remembers this Pontiac.
Right.
So now we talk about Sam Walton. So in Walmart, Sam Walton every day wore his hat. He was out there for his employees. He was there for
the people's champ.
He was the people's champ. Absolutely. He was there for his surroundings. Everybody around him, his local marketplace, his community. That's who he served.
Right.
And then they kind of lost that why.
Well, everything he did was as the people's champ, right?
Yep.
So he even took a relatively small salary of $350,000 a year for a CEO of a company, which
Walmart,
of the CEO of Walmart taking $350,000 a year salary, right? Because he was the people's champ. He didn't need this ridiculous salary because it wasn't just about making money; it was about providing this for the people. And then he passes away, and the new CEO takes over and says, we're gonna continue holding the torch for Walmart and what Sam Walton stood for. And to start, they took a $14 million a year salary.
In this book, they talk a lot about manipulations, that type of stuff.
Right, but
there you go.
And that just goes with, it really comes down to the celery test. Is what you're doing congruent with your beliefs? So real quick, the celery test, if you're a fitness and health person and you're going to buy food for your clients, right? You go to the grocery store, you heard that Oreos are really good for client retention. You heard that celery is really good for client retention. Now you have to make a choice. Which one am I going to buy? Am I going to buy both because I want to try both out and see which one works better because it's a 50-50 shot? I heard both are going to work really well. Or are you going to start with why? And if you start with why, there's only one choice to make. Even though Oreos are going to have a great client retention and celery is going to have a great client retention, there's only one choice because you know what your why is, and that's the celery test. So obviously, you're going to pick celery and you're going to give that to your clients because they believe the same thing you believe. And there's no question on what you're going to do. So for Sam Walton to only take a $350,000 a year salary, there was no question that that's what he's going to do because that was his why. He's the people's champ.
Right. And so you talk about your celery test. You look at your own business and you say, all right, the manipulations that are out there, that was where I was going with Walmart, right? His why was to serve his community, his employees, and everybody. He was right there. You know what I mean? He was right there in the trenches with it. And then you said, new guy takes a new salary. Do you really think he was in the trenches with everybody else? Do you really think he was helping clean the plains in Southwest, that type of thing? Manipulations. So now, not to their fault, not to their detriment, but Walmart is known as rolling back prices all the time, lowest price all the time. Right. Those are almost gimmicks. They're manipulations versus the genuine article of your why. If their why now is manipulations, then okay, it works. They have enough. They have enough back to do it. It can be. It can be. They're probably one of the only companies out there that can continue to pull it off.
Well, if you're not influencing people to come back and buy your products from you with an influential reason and a why, if they're just coming back because you're manipulating through a price reduction, the only way you're going to get them to come back is if you keep dropping the price. And eventually, you're not going to make any profit. And eventually, you're going to go out of business. So start with why.
So Harley Davidson. You're either in the market to buy a motorcycle or a Harley Davidson. People, 13% of their sales are clothing, apparel, that type of stuff, marketing stuff. There's nobody that's going to doubt that Harley's sometimes more expensive. It's going to take longer to get one custom built.
Yeah.
They might break more. I know I've had a couple. They are not better than any other motorcycle. But if you're in the market for a Harley, you're not settling for a Honda or a Kawasaki or anything like that. If you're in the market for a Harley, you're buying a Harley.
Right.
So another part of that, Apple, are they the cheapest? Absolutely not. Are they the best? Debatable. If you ask a diehard Apple cultish, yeah. iPhone. Anyway, if you ask one of those diehard cult following Apple people why, they're going to tell you it runs better, you can do more. Debatable. It's not cheaper. It might last a little bit longer. You can't run all the things you can on an Apple that you can with other things. Yet there is a following. Why? Look at their marketing.
Talk about the commercial that they did a while back. Probably one of the most influential commercials they've ever made. Anyone's ever made, really.
Yeah, the Think Differently. So you've got a commercial, you have no idea what it's for. Martin Luther King Jr., it was Neil Armstrong, it was probably Rosa Parks, Mahatma Gandhi, all of those people with music in the background. And you're watching this commercial like, these are all the innovators.
Is this a commercial for jeans?
Yeah, no, but you're not even thinking that. You're just caught up in these are the people who changed the world. And at the very end it says think differently or think different, and it shows the Apple emblem. Yeah. Everybody identifies with that, and they're like, that's me. I'm different. They're always challenging the status quo. He talks about that in the book a lot. Always challenging the status quo. And when you're an Apple cultist, believer, whatever it is, you're always thinking differently. You're always challenging the status quo. I won't take too long on it. A couple of their other commercials. There was Mac and PC. It was a young kid, t-shirt, jeans, and he represented Apple. And then there was a stiff in a suit representing PC. Right. Who's identifying with Apple in those commercials? There was no, we can do this. The iPod, the Zoom came out first, right?
Which was honestly a far superior product.
Yeah, it was. It could do more. It could on and on and on. Their commercials were, it's this thing. They gave you the specs. It was, I don't know how, 5 gigabytes, whatever it is. I don't know all that. But it said something like 5 gigabytes of this and that, and this is how it works. And people saw that. Then Apple came out with a silhouette dancing, and all they had to say was, you can take 5,000 songs anywhere you want. I think it was 5,000. Anywhere you want. So free range motion, you can do whatever you want, 500. That's all that people cared about.
And that's why.
That's it. That's your why. Why did they create this product? So you can free range, go wherever you want with this amount of songs. If you give me all the tech stuff, I'm like, okay.
And Microsoft created it specifically to be, from a spec standpoint, a superior product.
Yeah.
Which is great, but that does not continue your sales going forward.
What's their why?
It's a manipulation.
What's their why? I don't know. I know what Apple's is. They think differently. They challenge the status quo, and they have a cult following because of it.
And I think one thing on that as well, because I find myself getting caught on this. So Simon even says in the book, the part of the brain that processes your why and the part of the brain that articulates it don't communicate. So it can be very difficult at times to understand the why for a certain company, but you can see it through their actions, right? Because their actions always speak louder than words. I think that's a really interesting thing to understand. What are your actions saying about your why in your business?
Absolutely. If you want a strong why, look at Harley Davidson. People tattoo their corporate logo on. It's corporate logo. How many people out there have your corporate logo tattooed on their body? It's probably not going to happen. That's how you start with why. That's how you create that. So one thing just to maintain it before we wrap up, school bus test. We talk about hanging on to that why. There's a lot of companies, Apple actually, Steve Jobs wasn't with the company. They brought him back to cement that why again. So school bus test. How do you hang on to your why? What's a school bus test?
So a school bus test, if you walk outside tomorrow and you get hit by a school bus, does your company still hold your why and still move forward with your belief system? Or does it die with you?
So ask yourself that. When you're hiring employees, when you're putting systems together, is this going to carry on? As a Sam Walton, if you were to pass away, as a Steve Jobs, if you were to leave the company, is your why still there?
Are you hiring these people and giving them something to work on? Or are you hiring these people and giving them something to work towards?
Absolutely. So what do you rate in this book?
So, this book's awesome. I think the timelessness factor and the content of this book is just, it's amazing, right? Everyone should read this book because you need to understand this if you're going to be in business. And even if you're buying products and working with other companies, you need to understand their why. I'm giving this one a 4.6 out of 5.
All right. So I think I would have probably rated it a little lower if I didn't reread it, if I just came in and reviewed the book. Rereading it, all of those things came back, and I'm like, I literally bring this book up every single week. Every week.
It's a powerful book.
Yeah. So I gave it a 4.6 also. I think it's great. I think it really cements. Anytime you get into a book that's kind of longer, I don't like how it draws out and draws out and draws out. I liked how this kind of kept me engaged, kept cementing those lessons, and it's a 4.6 for me.
So unanimous 4.6.
All right, so a 4.6. What are we reading next now?
We're going to be reading Outrageous Authenticity by Lee Brown.
Right, that's a good one. So, conversation starts here. Fill up that comment section. We want to hear your comments. Ask the questions. We want to hear your big bangs. And as always,
Keep doing next level shit.
keep doing next level shit.